Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. In a few short years, digital banking has really caught on with South Africans. Now, research by Discovery Bank and Boston Consulting Group has found that 86% of South Africans across income bands prefer it, and more than 50% of consumers above the age of 60 are comfortable using a fully digital bank. For more on this, we're joined by Akash, Dowra, the head of client insights from Discovery Bank. Akash, very good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for your time. Some interesting developments around this data in the aftermath of a hard lockdown, which has accelerated the adoption of digital banking platforms. How was this research conducted?
Good afternoon, Paul, and thank you for having us. We wanted to take some research and look at how South Africans see banking and what they think banking should look like in the future. So we went out and looked at over 1,000 South Africans and over 400 businesses across all walks of life. So we made sure that the sample size looked at South Africans from all demographics, income groups, rural and urban areas, etc., to get a real, I think, holistic understanding of how South Africans see banking and how they would like to bank in the future.
Now, what were some of the interesting findings that came out of this? Because clearly it speaks to South Africans being further ahead of the technology curve than their banks.
Well, that was the interesting part. I think whenever people talk about digital banking and they talk about the research on digital banking, it's very much from the aspect of the innovation that the banks are bringing. But what we actually see is that clients and South Africans in general actually are much more aggressive. They're much more digitally savvy than I think anyone gives them credit for. And they're really looking for digital banking. I mean, when you look at the stats, 60% of South Africans believe that there won't be a need for a branch in the next 5 years, as an example. And you see that 86%, as you mentioned, use either their phones or web browser in order to do their day-to-day banking. But when you look at it from a capabilities perspective, you see that in order to onboard into a bank, as an example, 58% of South Africans that had to onboard or take on or open an account had to go visit their bank branch. And we see that from our onboarding as well. As a completely digital bank where you can join on your mobile phone, we see almost half of our clients, as an example, that join digitally, join after business hours. So they would join in the night. We see people joining the bank at 10, 11 o'clock at night. So you can really see this need for, I think, increased convenience and increased flexibility in their banking.
It also finds that only 40% of customers believe that there will be a need for bank branches in 5 years' time. I mean, there's some negatives and positives within that statement. 40% is a significant amount. But looking at the current climate, the unemployment rate in South Africa, that could be a threat of jobs.
This is one of the topics we discussed at length when we actually had a plenary on this to look at what impact would this have in terms of jobs, etc. But I think the way you need to look at it is a transformation of the industry. Where we see clients that use digital banking, they still want to speak to someone when they have an issue, right? But that person doesn't have to be in a branch. With a mobile phone, with data that you can use on your app. As an example, the Discovery Bank app is free to use from a data perspective. You can actually contact the banker and have someone guide you through aspects of the bank from the comfort of your home 24/7. So I don't think it's a case of actually losing jobs when you close down branches. It's about how do we transform that? How do we get more developers? How do we reskill people? And how do we have these really higher-end call centers that can actually support your clients and actually give them better service? Because I think that's what you get out of digital banking is clients will end up having a cheaper cost of banking, but actually much better service levels. So I think it's a retraining of the workforce that's needed.
And of course, speaking to the transformation of the industry, it will also require, you may mention retraining, but another caliber of the skill set in terms of graduates entering the industry.
Yes, I mean, we see that already at the moment. There's a real shortage of developers and coders in South Africa. So I really think it's an amazing opportunity when you look at young people and you're giving them advice around what careers to go into. by understanding what the future looks like and understanding where people are going, you can actually ensure that we have the right skilled labor and the right people to actually fulfill those jobs going forward.
Human interaction is still a preference for some. What did your findings show?
So on this, I think it is where we found this was where clients had complex transactions, or people are very, very happy to bank digitally or do a lot of things digitally. But where there's an issue, where there's a problem, or where there's a complex transaction, we find there clients want to speak to a person. So they don't want to go through a FAQ section. They may do that for a simple question, but they want to actually be able to talk to someone and that person to help them through whatever issue they're having, whether it is unblocking a card or whether it is finding a specific function within the app. And I think that's where there's a whole host of solutions now that can be actually delivered digitally. And that's why when we saw banking in the future, we saw a bionic model, a mix between technology and people, because I think there's still a definite need to have this face-to-face interaction with clients. But that can be done digitally. You look at video calling, you look at just the way we're doing this interview right now. A few years ago, I would have had to come into studio. I can actually do it from home now.
Yeah.
So we can look at all of these different ways that we can actually provide the same type of face-to-face interaction, but in a digital format, which, by the way, allows you to, number one, deliver it in a cheaper manner. But secondly, you can ensure that you actually offer a deeper level of expertise, because you can actually concentrate all of those expertise. You can ensure the right training is given. You can ensure that all of the right experts are there to actually deliver the service.
What about what the banks constantly need to do when it comes to delivering an ecosystem of trusted service delivery? Because we know that there continues to be threats on digital platforms when it comes to fraud, cybercrime, and all of those challenges.
So I think that's a role that the banks can play a significant part in. The banks across South Africa are exceptionally good at managing their cyber risk. And from that perspective, we're all part of banking associations that look at security, look at cyber security, look at the risk of fraud across the bases. And the fact of the matter is your banking app is probably one of the most secure apps on your phone. In order to get into the Discovery Bank app, you need to use facial recognition as an example. But you can take it a step further. You can look at when you're making a high-value transaction that is outside of your typical transaction patterns. We can pick that up and then step you up to a further level of security. We can there's technology today that understands the cadence of your taps on the keyboard or on the phone. So where those taps or cadence changes, we know if someone else is actually, even though they may have got you to log in, we know that someone else is typing in the details. So all of that's available to give you this really secure environment that keeps your money safe, but then can actually be extended to other areas. And it can be extended to other areas both from a security perspective, but also from a convenience perspective. So you actually get the best of both worlds. We integrated into our health systems, Discovery Health Systems as an example, where clients who would need to make co-payments when they went to pick up their medication at pharmacies now just have to go in, pick up their medication, and then we automatically identify them and debit their bank accounts for the co-payments as an example. So that's just the way I think you can create these ecosystems, whether it's a travel ecosystem or a health ecosystem or a transport ecosystem, that actually allows you to create a secure method for clients to transact and have access to all of these functions in a trusted manner.
Very well. Thank you so much for your time. Let's leave it there for now. Akash Dowra, Head of Client Insights at Discovery Bank, speaking about the future of retail banking in South Africa.